Millionaire falls for Waitress. Then fate flips the script. The hum of Boston never really stopped. In the heart of the city, 28-year-old Lila Moreno had mastered the morning rush at Russwood Diner, weaving through tables with plates balanced like a pro and a smile that warmed even the sleepiest souls. Her chestnut hair, usually tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, framed a face lit by hazel eyes that somehow made every customer feel like they mattered. But behind that warmth was a life far tougher than most could guess. Lila had grown up in the working-class neighborhoods of East Boston, the daughter of immigrant parents who spent their lives chasing the American dream. That dream shattered one rainy night when Lila was just 20. A tragic car crash stole her parent from her, leaving her the sole guardian of her younger brother, Matteo, only 10 at the time. Now 16, Matteo was everything to her. Diagnosed with a rare chronic condition, he relied on Lila for everything, emotionally, physically, and financially. To keep up with his treatments and mounting bills, Lila worked long hours at the diner and cleaned offices on weekends. Still, she never let the weight of her world dull her spirit. "She's got the heart of a lion," her best friend and fellow waitress, Mandy, often said. "Tougher than most men I've met." Just a few miles away, inside a sleek glass tower that overlooked the Charles River, 35-year-old Owen Callahan sat in his corner office, staring out at a city he'd helped shape. A tech visionary, Owen had built one of the fastest-growing software empires in the country. He owned a penthouse in Beacon Hill, a garage full of rare cars, and enough money to never need to look at a price tag again. But none of it filled the silence when the doors closed behind him. In the cutthroat world of business, Owen had learned to be careful. Too many people wanted something from him. Friends disappeared when favors dried up, and most women who courted I seemed far more drawn to his fortune than to the man himself. At night, he'd sit alone, a glass of scotch in hand, the lights of Boston blinking outside his floor-to-ceiling windows, and wonder if this was all there was. Then, one cold morning in early November, Owen wandered into Russwood Diner. He didn't know what pulled him in. Maybe the charming brick exterior, or the promise of being anonymous in a place that felt nothing like his world. The bell above the door gave a soft jingle, and Lila turned toward him with her usual smile. "Good morning. Table for one." He nodded, momentarily caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. She led him to a window seat, handed him a menu, and went to fetch coffee. The diner bustled with life, but somehow it felt peaceful, real. Owen began stopping by every morning after that. At first, it was just for the coffee and the calm. But soon, he realized he was coming back for something else entirely. For her, she noticed him too. Always the same table. Always the same quiet. His order never changed. Black coffee, whole wheat toast, no butter. He rarely smiled, but when he did, it seemed genuine, even vulnerable. "You must really like the coffee," Lila teased one morning as she refilled his mug. He looked up, slightly surprised. Then came a rare, soft smile. "It's not just the coffee. This place, it's different." "Oh, yay." She tilted her head. "Different how?" "It's honest," he said after a pause. "Feels like nobody's pretending here." Lila chuckled under her breath. "Well, that's the goal. Life's hard enough without pretending." He nodded, her words landing heavier than she could have known. Their small talks began to stretch longer. He asked about her day, and she asked about his. She told him about Matteo, how he was obsessed with comic books and wanted to be an illustrator someday. She confessed her dream of owning a little bakery cafe someday, maybe with a book corner and an open MIC night on Fridays. Owen, who rarely spoke about himself, found himself opening up. He shared pieces of his world, how he'd built his company from nothing, how success had left him lonelier than he'd expected. To Lila, Owen was a mystery, charming but guarded, as if he were carrying something too heavy to name. To Owen, Lila was like fresh air, kind and grounded, with none of the polish or pretense he'd grown so used to. Without realizing it, the two were forming something rare, a fragile, steady bond. He started staying longer, lingering over his coffee, watching her as she moved through the diner, greeting regulars by name, crouching to chat with kids, offering comfort to an elderly widower who'd just lost his wife. Even in the busiest moments, she kept smiling. He admired her strength as much as her kindness. Lila noticed Owen, too. He wasn't like the rush morning crowd that barked out orders and left without a second glance. He was present, quietly watching, listening, as though he cared more about the people around him than he let on. Still, she was cautious. In her world, wealth often came with arrogance. And men like him, with their expensive coats and reserved silence, usually saw girls like her as disposable, nothing more than background noise. So, she kept her guard up. But Owen wasn't going anywhere. Owen started asking small things, nothing too personal at first. How was your day? Got a favorite coffee blend? Bit by bit, Lila found herself lowering her guard. Not all at once, but enough that her replies came with real smiles now instead of practiced ones. One evening, just before closing, Owen lingered at his usual corner table, quietly typing away on his laptop. The diner had mostly emptied out, the usual clatter replaced with soft music and the low hum of conversation in the back kitchen. Lila approached with a steaming cup. "On the house," she said, setting it down gently beside him. He looked up, surprised. "What's the occasion?" "You've been working hard," she shrugged, nodding toward his screen. "Everybody deserves a little break." Owen let out a soft chuckle. "You sound like someone who knows all about hard work." Lila hesitated, then, with a quiet smile, said, "It's all I've ever known." Something in her tone made him pause, but he didn't press. Instead, he replied gently, "You make it look easy." She laughed softly, honestly. "Trust me, it's not." That simple moment cracked open something between them. After that, their talk stretched longer. Lila began sharing pieces of her life. How baking helped her feel close to her late mother, her dream of opening her own little cafe someday, and her fierce love for her brother, Matteo. One morning, as she set down his toast, Owen leaned in slightly and said, "You've got more grit than half the CEOs I've ever met." She raised an eyebrow, playful. "Is that a compliment, or are you just calling me stubborn?" He laughed. "It's a compliment. Swear." Lila couldn't help the smile that tugged at her lips. Still, some part of her stayed cautious. Who was this man, this tech mogul who seemed to genuinely care about her stories, her dreams, her day? Owen couldn't deny it anymore. He was drawn to her in ways that surprised him. Lila was unlike anyone he had ever known. Genuine, grounded, kind in a world that rarely rewarded kindness. And strong, stronger than he'd ever been. One rainy afternoon, while they were trading favorite book titles, Owen looked up and said, "I'd like to get to know you outside of this diner." Lila blinked, caught off guard. "Are you asking me out?" He paused, nervous for the first time in years. Then nodded. "Yeah. Dinner maybe? Nothing fancy. Just time to talk without the interruptions." She studied him, eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "I don't do well with fancy restaurants. Just so you know." Owen smiled. "Perfect. Neither do I." A week later, they met at a tiny Italian bistro tucked in the quiet side streets of Cambridge. Owen arrived early, adjusting his watch more than once. He'd closed deals worth hundreds of millions without blinking, but now he felt like a schoolboy waiting to be picked for a dance. When Lila walked in, wearing a simple navy dress and that same shy smile, it took his breath for a moment. Not because of what she wore, but because of how real she looked, comfortable in her own skin. The evening flowed easily, filled with laughter, deep conversation, and surprising comfort. They swapped stories from their childhoods, their hopes, and the wounds that hadn't quite healed. Owen admitted that sometimes, despite all he had, he still felt profoundly alone. Lila shared stories of her parents, and the promise she'd made to herself to give Matteo a better life. By the time dessert came, Owen knew one thing. He didn't just admire her. He respected her. For Lila, the night changed everything. Owen wasn't the aloof, arrogant millionaire she had once assumed. He was thoughtful, soft-spoken, human in all the ways that mattered. And yet, that old voice inside her whispered, "You're just a waitress." What would a man like him see in someone like you? Owen must have sensed a hesitation. "Lila," he said softly, "I know our lives look different on the surface, but they're not as far apart as they seem. You're the most honest, grounded person I've ever met, and I don't want to lose that." His words stripped away her doubts. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe maybe love didn't care about money or status. Maybe love just needed two people brave enough to show up, scars and all. As the weeks passed, their connection only grew deeper. Owen still visited the diner every morning, but it wasn't just for coffee anymore. Lila started to anticipate the jingle of the bell, her heart skipping whenever she saw him walk through the door. Their conversations turned playful, their eye contact lingered longer, and their laughter became something the regulars noticed. What had begun as simple curiosity now glowed with the warmth of something real. One night, after dinner, they walked through Boston Common under a canopy of streetlights and autumn leaves. Owen turned to her, his voice quiet but steady. "I know it might sound crazy," he said, "but meeting you, it's been the best thing to happen to me in a long time." Lila looked up at him, eyes wide and searching. "Why me, Owen? Of all the people you could have, why me?" He smiled gently. "Because you're the only one who makes me feel like I belong." In the heart of a city built on ambition and noise, two very different souls had stumbled into something rare, something simple, powerful, and true. But not everyone welcomed the change in Owen. His inner circle, the high-powered friends, the social climbers, the polished investors, began noticing. He skipped gallery openings, ignored private yacht invites, smiled more. One night, during a members-only dinner at a sleek rooftop club in Back Bay, his closest friend, Brandon, leaned over and said, "You've been off the grid, man. Everything okay?" Owen took a breath and nodded. "I've been seeing someone." Brandon raised an eyebrow. "Someone special?" "She is," Owen said simply. Brandon smirked. "So? Who is she?" Owen hesitated for a moment, then answered, "Her name's Lila. She works at a diner." The air went still. For a beat, no one spoke. Then Brandon chuckled. "A waitress? You serious?" Owen didn't flinch. Dead serious. Another man at the table let out a sharp laugh. "Come on, man. A billionaire and a diner girl? Sounds like a Netflix special." "She's probably after his money," someone else muttered under their breath. At best, a woman chimed in, sipping her wine. "She's got a plan. Make him fall for her, cash in, and disappear. I give it a month." Owen heard the whispers. He didn't show it, but their words sank in, and like a crack in solid glass, a seed of doubt began to grow. Back at Rustwood Diner, Lila was beginning to feel the cold edge of judgment, not from strangers this time, but from people she'd once considered her second family. The same co-workers who had stood by her through loss and struggle now looked at her with sideways glances and half-hearted smiles. "So," Mandy said one morning as they manned the register together, "you and Mr. Cappuccino are a thing now." Lila flushed. "We've been spending time together," she replied carefully. Mandy glanced at her, then looked away. "Just be careful. Guys like him don't stick around. They get bored. Move on." Lila tried to brush it off, but she couldn't ignore the whispers trailing behind her like shadows in the diner. Some regulars looked at her as if she'd won a raffle she didn't deserve. Others barely hid their smug assumptions, like she was a charity case Owen had taken on for entertainment. Even out in the world, strangers had opinions. One sunny afternoon, as she and Owen walked hand in hand through Boston Common, a well-dressed woman paused in front of them, eyeing Lila from head to toe before turning to Owen. "I didn't know you were into charity work now," she said with a laugh. Lila's heart clenched, but she smiled, pretending it didn't cut as deep as it did. The pressure was mounting on Owen, too. He loved Lila, her warmth, her sincerity, her courage, but the voices of his so-called friends buzzed in his ear like a swarm of hornets. One night, during a late phone call, Brandon's voice rang out through his Bluetooth headset. "You've got to wake up, man," he said, unfiltered. "She's using you. I mean, come on, how do you really know she's not playing the long game?" Owen hung up, trying to shake off the words, but they echoed in his mind, festering in the quiet hours of the night. Later that week, after a grueling day at work, he sat alone in his penthouse, the lights of Boston flickering beyond the glass. His reflection stared back at him, uncertain. What if they're right? What if she's only here for what I can give her? Lila felt the weight of the world pressing down from every angle. Each interaction now came laced with subtle jabs, little reminders that she didn't belong. Even Matteo noticed. "You're quiet," he said one night as they sat on the couch eating dinner. "Everything okay?" Lila sighed. "It's just people are talking. About me and Owen. Like I don't deserve to be with him." Matteo frowned. "Do you love him?" Lila hesitated, then nodded. "I think I do. But it's hard. Tio, people like him. They don't end up with people like me." "You always told me that what matters is what's inside a person," Matteo said. "So why can't you believe that for yourself?" Tears welled in her eyes. She wanted to believe him, but the weight of judgment felt too heavy to carry alone. The tension between them came to a head one night as they sat in Owen's penthouse, the skyline behind them shimmering in the glass. Owen looked at her carefully. "Lila," he said gently, "I need to ask you something, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from." She tensed. "What is it?" "Do you ever think about what people are saying? About us? How different our lives are?" Her heart dropped. "Are you asking if I'm with you because of your money?" He didn't answer right away, and that moment of silence said everything. Lila stood up, voice trembling. "I can't believe this." "Lila, it's not about you," he tried to explain. "It's what everyone else is saying. The pressure, the noise, it's getting to me." "You don't trust me," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "And if you can't trust me, then this won't work." She turned and walked out, the door closing behind her like a judge's gavel. For days, Owen replayed that moment, her expression, her words, her absence. He tried calling, but she didn't answer. Meanwhile, Lila buried herself in work, pouring every ounce of her pain into long shifts and sleepless nights. She tried to forget, the way he looked at her, the way he made her laugh, but her heart wouldn't let go. Despite the silence between them, neither could truly move on. Somewhere deep down, both of them knew what they had was real, and it was worth fighting for. A few weeks later, the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton glowed with elegance. Crystal chandeliers bathed the room in golden light, reflecting off polished marble and designer gowns. Boston's elite had gathered for a black-tie charity gala, an event Owen had hosted more out of obligation than desire. But this year, he wasn't alone. Lila stood beside him, radiant in a deep emerald dress, her hair swept up in soft curls. She smiled graciously, but beneath the surface, her stomach twisted. She didn't belong here, not among hedge fund titans and socialites, and the sidelong glances reminded her of it every few minutes. Owen sensed her unease and gently squeezed her hand. "You belong here," he whispered. "Don't let them convince you otherwise." As the evening wore on, Owen was pulled away by business acquaintances, leaving Lila by the refreshment table. She sipped champagne slowly, trying to look comfortable. But everything about the room made her feel like an outsider, like an imposter who'd slipped through a locked door. Then came the wolves. Brandon and a few others sauntered over, dressed in tailored tuxedos and confidence too slick to be sincere. "So," Brandon began with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, "you must be the famous Lila we've all heard so much about." Lila offered a small, polite smile. "I guess so." A woman beside him, draped in sequins and dripping disdain, raised a champagne glass. "You're very brave. You know, it must take a lot of confidence to step into a world like this." Lila caught the barb in her tone, but she held her ground. "I'm here because Owen invited me," she said calmly. "That's all that matters." Brandon let out a short laugh, swirling the liquor in his glass. Sure. But let's be honest. This must feel like hitting the jackpot. Huh? A waitress landing a billionaire? Sounds like something straight out of a Hallmark movie." Their laughter was sharp and mean, but Lila didn't flinch. She simply set down her glass, stood a little taller, and looked Brandon in the eye. "I didn't land anyone," she said. "I showed up. I was honest. And I treated him like a person. Maybe that's why he noticed me." They didn't have a comeback, but in that moment, surrounded by gold chandeliers and empty smiles, Lila realized something. She didn't need their approval. She had never needed it. What she needed was clarity, and the only person who could give her that was Owen. The group burst into laughter, their cruel mockery sharper than they realized. Lila's cheeks flushed with heat, her fingers tightening around her champagne glass. "I care about Owen for who he is," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Not what he has." "Sure you do," Brandon replied, smirking. "But let's not kid ourselves. This is a step up for you, right? Must feel nice to hang up the apron and trade in diner grease for crystal flutes." That's when Owen appeared behind them, having caught the tail end of Brandon's smug remark. His jaw clenched as his eyes landed on Lila's stricken face. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice sharp enough to slice through the laughter. Brandon threw up his hands in mock innocence. "Just getting to know your companion a little better." Lila turned to Owen, her expression brittle with hurt. "I think I've had enough for tonight," she whispered, setting her glass down with a soft clink. "Lila, wait!" Owen reached for her arm, but she stepped away. "I can't do this," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't belong here." And with that, she walked out of the ballroom, her heels echoing across marble floors as she vanished into the cold night air. Owen caught up with her outside the hotel. She stood at the curb, trying to hail a cab as the wind tugged at the hem of her dress. The chill bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. "Lila, please, don't go," he said breathlessly. "I'm sorry for what they said. They don't know you. They don't understand." She turned to him, her face streaked with tears. "But you do, Owen. You know exactly who I am, and you still let them treat me like that." "I didn't know they." "You didn't stop them," she snapped, her voice full of pain. "You stood there and let them humiliate me." His shoulders slumped, her words hitting him harder than any boardroom blow. "I made a mistake," he said, voice raw. "Let me fix this. Let me show you that you're the only one who matters to me." But Lila shook her head slowly. "It's not just about them, Owen. It's about us. I can't be the reason you're constantly at war with your world. That's not fair, to you or to me." A cab pulled to the curb. She opened the door and paused, her voice soft but final. "Goodbye, Owen." And then she was gone. For the first time in years, Owen felt powerless. He returned to the ballroom. But the lights, the champagne, the laughter, it all felt empty. "Hello," he excused himself, left without another word, and returned to his penthouse. The skyline stretched out before him, glittering and uncaring. He stood at the window, haunted by the memory of her tearful face, by the echo of the door closing behind her. He had promised to protect her, and when it mattered most, he had failed. In the days that followed, Owen withdrew from his usual circles. He ignored the party invitations, the networking events, the shallow conversations. For the first time in his life, he questioned everything, his friends, his values, even the life he had built from the ground up. Lila had shown him something real, a life of heart instead of appearances, of substance instead of spectacle. And losing her had made it all too clear. He couldn't go back to who he'd been. So Owen started changing, not to win her back, but to become the kind of man worthy of someone like her. He cut ties with Brandon and the rest of the crew who had mocked Lila. When Brandon called days later, offering a half-hearted apology rooted more in self-preservation and remorse, Owen didn't flinch. "You don't get to treat people like that," he said, "and you don't get to be in my life anymore." He hung up without another word. Then, slowly, he turned inward. Evenings once filled with silent brooding became filled with books, philosophy, human nature, emotional intelligence. He started volunteering at a local youth center, sitting with kids who came from broken homes and uncertain futures. He listened more, spoke less. For the first time, Owen didn't see his privilege as armor. He saw it as responsibility. Weeks later, after deep reflection and quiet resolve, Owen found himself standing outside the Rustwood Diner. It was late afternoon. The place was nearly empty. He spotted Lila inside, wiping down tables with the same quiet focus she always had. The sight of her made his breath catch in his throat. He stepped in, and the bell above the door jingled. She turned, surprised. Her eyes hardened slightly. "Owen." "I came to apologize," he said softly, but with conviction. "For everything. For not standing up for you. For letting people hurt you. For letting you down." She shook her head, her voice steady but firm. "It's too late, Owen. I told you. I can't be the reason you're constantly fighting with your world." "They're not part of my world anymore," he said. "I cut them out." Her eyebrows lifted, just slightly, but her tone remained composed. "That doesn't change the truth. You and I come from different places. You need someone who fits seamlessly into your life, someone who doesn't make everything harder." Owen stepped closer. "You're wrong, Lila." He took a breath. "I don't need someone who fits into my life. I need someone who gives it meaning. That's you." Her eyes welled slightly, but she shook her head. "I can't do this, Owen. Please, just let me go." And even though the word stung, Owen didn't walk away. Not this time. Because something in her voice told him it wasn't rejection. It was fear. Fear that their love couldn't survive the pressure of two worlds colliding. So he decided to take another path. If he couldn't be with her yet, he'd show her who he truly was. Not with words, but with action. He started asking questions. Quietly, respectfully. Through MIA, he learned more about Lila's life, especially her little brother, Matteo, who she had raised single-handedly since their parents died. He learned about Matteo's medical condition, the long nights Lila had spent in hospitals, the financial strain, the cleaning job she took on weekends just to keep the lights on. And the more Owen learned, the deeper his admiration grew. She wasn't just kind. She was fierce, a fighter, and if he was going to win her back, he needed to fight just as hard. Matteo's treatment came with a steep price tag, one Lila had been quietly battling for years. Between the cafe and weekend cleaning jobs, every spare dollar went to hospital bills and prescriptions. Owen, upon learning the full extent of Matteo's condition, saw his chance, not just to help, but to prove that what he felt for Lila wasn't some fleeting crush. He called in favors, tapped into his vast network, and arranged for one of the top pediatric specialists in the city to take over Matteo's care. The costs? Covered. No fanfare, no big announcement, just quiet action. But when Lila found out, she was livid. She stormed outside the cafe after her shift, her hands trembling as she confronted him on the sidewalk. "You did this behind my back," she snapped, her voice rising. "Who said you could step in like this? I don't need your charity, Owen." "It's not charity," Owen said, his voice calm but firm. "It's love." She blinked, stunned. "I did it because I care about you," he continued, "and because Matteo deserved the best shot at life, without it crushing you every single day." Lila stared at him, caught between fury and something softer. "You can't just fix everything with money." "I know," Owen said, the truth of it heavy in his voice. "But this wasn't about throwing cash at a problem. It was about seeing you, really seeing you. You've carried so much on your own. I just wanted to help, not because I think you need rescuing, but because you shouldn't have to walk through this life alone." For the first time, Lila saw him clearly, not the millionaire in the tailored coat, but the man behind the suits, the one who had changed, who had grown, but still her guard remained. "It's going to take more than grand gestures," she said quietly. "I know," Owen replied. "I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I'm just asking you not to shut the door on me completely." As he walked away, Lila stood frozen, a flicker of hope warming beneath the chill she'd built around her heart. The weeks that followed were full of quiet shifts and soft moments. Owen kept visiting Matteo's clinic, bringing comic books, puzzles, and stories. Matteo lit up whenever he saw him. And slowly, the boy became the bridge neither of them expected. "He's not like the people you're scared of," Matteo told his sister one night over dinner. "Owen's different. I think he really loves you." Lila sighed, looking out the window of their modest apartment. She didn't answer, but she didn't argue either. She felt the difference in Owen now, through Matteo's stories, through his actions, and most of all through the part of her heart that still ached for him. A few days later, while closing up the cafe for the night, she heard a soft knock on the front door. There he was. Owen stood in the cold, hands tucked into his coat pockets, looking more unsure than she'd ever seen him. Her breath caught, but she unlocked the door anyway. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice guarded. "I needed to see you," he said. She crossed her arms. "I thought we said everything there was to say." "You might have," Owen said gently. But I haven't. He stepped inside, that confident air replaced by something far more human, something vulnerable. Lila, he began, I know I hurt you, and I can't take that back. But I need you to understand, these past few months, I've changed. Because of you. She raised an eyebrow, skeptical. I'm not interested in speeches. Owen, I'm not looking for some picture-perfect romance. I need something real. That's all I've got, he said, his voice breaking slightly. When I met you, I thought I understood love. But you showed me what it really means. Love isn't about appearances. It's not about comfort. It's about truth. It's about fighting for someone because your soul recognizes them. He paused, his eyes glassy. You made me realize none of this, none of it, means anything without someone to share it with. Without you. Lila's heart beat faster. She wanted to believe him. Good, she did. I don't know if I can do this again, she whispered. I'm scared. Scared of being hurt. Scared of not being enough. Owen stepped closer. You've always been more than enough. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if you'll let me. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. He opened it, revealing a simple, elegant ring. Lila Morales, he said, his voice thick with emotion. You are the most remarkable person I've ever known. You've taught me what it means to love fiercely, to live with heart. I don't want another day to pass without you by my side. He dropped to one knee. Will you marry me? Lila stood frozen. The world fell away, the cafe, the city, the years of hurt. She looked at the man kneeling in front of her, the man who once let her down, the man who had fought to change, the man who had come back, not with promises, but with purpose. Tears spilled down her cheeks as her heart warred with her fears. You're serious? She asked, her voice barely audible. More than I've ever been about anything. She inhaled deeply. In that moment, she thought of all the reasons to walk away, the judgment, the risks, the miles between their lives. But she also thought of all the reasons to say yes, to choose love, to build something stronger than what the world said they could have. The kindness Owen had shown to Mitu, the genuine changes he had made in his life, and the way he looked at Lila, as if she were the only thing that truly mattered, overwhelmed her. Her voice trembling, she whispered, Yes, Owen, I'll marry you. A radiant smile spread across Owen's face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Pulling her into his arms, Lila felt a wave of emotions, relief, joy, and above all, hope. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe in a future built not on wealth or status, but on love and mutual respect. I promise you, Owen said softly, his voice steady with conviction, I'll never let you down again. Lila rested her head against his chest, the warmth of his embrace soothing the doubts that had long haunted her. She realized Owen had truly changed, not just for her, but because of her. That night, as they walked hand in hand through the quiet streets of New York, Lila smiled. They had faced countless challenges, but in the end, love had won. For the first time, she felt not only loved but truly understood. Their wedding was far from the grand affair one might expect of a millionaire. Instead, it was an intimate ceremony held in a charming garden in New York, surrounded by their closest friends and family. The atmosphere was warm and full of love, a true reflection of their journey. Lila wore a simple yet elegant dress, her radiant smile making her the most beautiful woman in Owen's eyes. Mita stood proudly by her side, his health much improved thanks to Owen's care. As Owen exchanged vows with Lila, his voice was steady but full of emotion. He promised not only to love her, but also to honor the lessons she had taught him about humility, kindness, and the true meaning of life. Their union marked the beginning of a new chapter, built on trust, respect, and a shared vision for the future. After the wedding, Owen and Lila left behind the glittering social scene that had once defined Owen's life. Together, they focused on building a life filled with purpose. Lila, inspired by her compassion, dreamed of helping those in need. Owen, moved by her spirit, proposed they establish a foundation dedicated to supporting underprivileged individuals and families. Thus, the Hope and Heart Foundation was born, offering scholarships, medical support, and housing assistance to those struggling to make ends meet. Lila took charge of day-to-day operations, her warmth and empathy making her beloved in the community. Owen used his resources and connections to fund and expand the foundation's reach. For the first time, his wealth felt like a tool for good rather than a source of isolation. Despite their success, Owen and Lila chose to live simply. They moved into a cozy brownstone in Brooklyn, spending quiet evenings cooking dinner together and enjoying long walks in the park with Mitu and their adopted rescue dog Bella. Lila returned to Crescent Moon Cafe, not as a waitress, but as a co-owner. Together, she and Owen invested in the cafe, ensuring it remained a welcoming space for the community. Every morning, Owen and Lila would visit the cafe, sitting at the same corner table where their story began. They shared coffee, laughter, and moments of quiet reflection, savoring the life they had built together. Their journey was far from ordinary, but it carried a universal truth. Love, when rooted in authenticity and mutual respect, can overcome even the most daunting challenges. Through their struggles, Owen learned that wealth and success mean little without meaningful connection. Lila discovered that true love could bridge the gap between two seemingly different worlds. Their story became an inspiration, a reminder that a person's true value lies not in status or possessions, but in the heart and character they carry. One sunny afternoon, Owen and Lila returned to Crescent Moon Cafe for its grand reopening under Lila's co-ownership. The cafe had been refreshed with new paint and furniture, but its cozy charm remained intact. As they sat at their familiar table, surrounded by the hum of happy customers, Owen reached across and took Lila's hand. "This place," he said softly, eyes glistening, "it's where everything started." Lila smiled, her heart full, "And it's where we'll keep building everything that matters." Just then, Mitu entered carrying a tray of pastries he'd helped bake, his laughter filling the room. Bella wagged her tail excitedly at his heels. Owen and Lila exchanged a look, a quiet understanding between two souls who had found something rare and precious, a life built on love, understanding, and purpose. Owen gazed out the window at the bustling New York streets. The emptiness that had once haunted him was gone, replaced by gratitude. Gratitude for Lila, for the life they had created, and for the love that had transformed him. Lila felt a deep sense of peace. Once, she had believed someone like Owen could never truly understand her world. Now, she knew their love had been worth every struggle, every tear. The lesson of Lila and Owen's story is clear. True love is not measured by wealth, status, or appearances. It demands vulnerability, selflessness, and the courage to grow together. It teaches us that it's never too late to change, to choose kindness, and to find meaning in the connections we share. Love can bridge any gap when it's built on understanding and compassion.